physical. Um, and I think that the abstract structure, I think she mentioned it, is uh, it's in our social relations. It's in our social relations with one another. You know, when we consider Africa, Mother Africa, Old Africa, we were a people that had a certain cultural life, but undergirding all of it was a certain set of beliefs, a certain way of being, just our sentiments, our sensitivities, our view of reality in the world. And I think that is what was lost more than any other thing, uh, by way of the transatlantic slave trade. We were lost, or what was lost was our sense of peoplehood, uh, our sense of self from the inside out. And all we had to rely upon in light of that experience, without going into details of the experience, what we had to rely upon essentially was our abstract human form, and be really remade all over again. So I think that it's imperative for us to uh, grow in social and spiritual maturity, uh, which will support
Mm.
the work of New Africa.
Mm.
You know, so I'm sure we'll have time for this in the discussion, but I think that, you know, we can look at just clear examples of our life today. If you look at the condition of family in our communities, not just in the Muslim community, but the African American community, period. You know, it's an abnormal, I stress this, I try to stress it at Atlanta Masjid. And I think, you know, I think it reaches, but then I think it doesn't reach. Meaning that I think for people, they know it's true, but to really conform to what you know is true, it's another thing.
Mm.
It's not a normal thing to have your women just single and have your women working at warehouses and stuff like that. And we just walk around like everything is hunky dory. That is actually an abnormality.
Mm.
Uh, that is we have a social uh, we are socially impaired in that regard, and that's just an example. Uh,
Right.
but in terms of how we could care for one another, in terms of how we think, what our aspirations are, like what do we imagine success to be?
Mm.
What is success? What is happiness? All of these things, which is the abstract. Um, it has to be formed, because you mentioned the quote about Imam Muhammad said he has the concern of reordering the African American mind. And I think that when we do that and we have that physical manifestation of that, that would really feed the world. It will really feed the world, because I think for the first time since the beginning of the world, or no, not since the beginning, I definitely would say since the first time, since the time of Muhammad the Prophet, the world would have a circumstance to bear witness the creation of a new people right before their eyes.
Mm.
Alhamdulillah, appreciate that.
Wow.
You had mentioned, I'm listening to you mention the uh, the psychological damage and effects that have happened to us as a people, and I'm just thinking about and really using this time during the shutdown, coronavirus, and the month of Ramadan to really reflect. Because I remember Imam Muhammad saying years ago when I was younger, and it helped me, and I'm just reflecting on this more and more now as an adult, as a father, as a husband. Um, he was talking to African American leaders, and he said that we have to be honest with ourselves and like really do self-analysis, and to say that, just think and say that perhaps that there's a possibility that I've been affected by, slavery, Jim Crow, and all the things that have happened to us. Because you have to be honest with yourselves and with ourselves in terms of where we are as human beings, whereas particularly African Americans. And once we do that, and that will help us to, relieve us of a lot of stress. It might cause stress in the beginning, but uh, in identifying the problem is the solution. So we're going to begin with the list of questions that we have put together for this panel. Inshallah, we'll get through all of them or most of them. And I'm putting this out there to you, brother, so I'm really just hosting. Why is being conscious of our ethnic identity important as it relates to the vision and direction of our community under Imam W.D. Muhammad? Let me repeat that just so we hear that again. Why is being conscious of our ethnic identity important as it relates to the vision and direction of our community under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad? You want to feel free to answer.
I'll answer. Well, I'll start. I think that if I'm hearing the question correctly, first, what's important for any human being, is knowledge of self. You know, Allah, the way Allah created us is interesting. We don't learn about Allah until years later. We learn about our mothers, we learn about our fathers, we learn about our siblings, we learn about our environment. In that environment, our parents, etc., they introduce us to Allah. And scripturally speaking, we really ought to learn ourselves before we learn God. There's a hadith. It's a forged hadith, but the meaning is respected among the learned. So they keep it in circulation that he who knows himself knows God. And there's various directions of that language. But the point that I'm making in the beginning, at least as the premise, is that it's very important for a person and for people to know themselves. And what makes a person, what makes a people? Their circumstances, their history. So if we don't know, or if we know what we endured throughout the generations, then chances are we will be able to know why we are in our current circumstances. This is just for human beings in general. So as it was said in the first, and as Malcolm kind of popularized, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. We're trying to heal the Black man. We're trying to show the Black man the nature of the white man. And we're trying to show him why it's asinine to try to convert this white man to righteous behavior, etc. Why are we so convinced? How can we be so sure? Look at history. Look at this man's history. I'm just saying this is the argument. Mm-hmm. So that's for any person, that's for any people. When you go to a psychologist, you say, doctor, I'm having such and such set of problems. They're going to want to know your personal history. How did you grow up? What did you see? And somewhere along the line, they're going to be able to pinpoint, this is what happened to you. You saw this happen, you experienced this, and it's carried over into your life, and it manifests in these set of behaviors. And these behaviors hinder you from making progress, or proper progress to have a healthy life, etc. So as African Americans, the name in and of itself, Africans brought to America, those are volumes. The social circumstances, because the history is just a documentation of the social circumstances. And the effect of the social circumstances is the psychological effect. So those are volumes. What happened to us? If all of us, as you mentioned, Ahmed, you're a father, you're a husband. Sharif is a father. He just had a baby. I'm a father. I'm a husband. Imagine we all go out to the store later on the day and we never come home again. And our wives and our children never know what happened to us. That is, you can't fathom the effect that has on the mind of our children and our wives, let alone what the effect on our minds, being snatched up and kidnapped, taken to wherever. So when you think about just these kind of micro examples, and then you compound them and say, wow, from the very outset of our experience as a people from Africa and being made slaves, you're talking about just compounded trauma to the human soul. And what is the effect? We have a certain set of behaviors, we have a certain set of aspirations, etc., that define us as a people. So the African American people, our definition, our identity is found in the nature of our soul, which is the effect of this history. Now, the effect of that history has been positive and negative because we have had certain traumatic experience that allows us to behave in a way that is detrimental to our life as a group. So, for instance, we mentioned the situation about the Black family being broken up, and it's really being normalized among us. This is a carryover, so from our experience. So this is a negative effect. But at the same time, our history shows that these unique challenges and burdens put on our soul has produced wonderful souls, exceptional souls, very blessed souls. Um, and we, to just kind of fast forward through it, because we know the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we know Dr. King, we know all Marcus Garvey, we know the great many souls that we can't really do justice to discussing their contribution. We see Imam Muhammad as really the best, the child, the son of the African American people, the son of the positive direction in the African American soul that was fighting against, that was working its way out of all of these challenges and burdens that were put on our soul. We see him as the son of a people, and as the best expression of the sons of a people who are trying to work their way out of these issues. And God responded to his effort. And God himself taught Imam W.D. Muhammad and gave Imam W.D. Muhammad that which is necessary to liberate the whole people. See, all of those great leaders, Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, etc., even when you go back and read David Walker's Appeal, etc., these men represent one soul, and they represent one spirit, a direction, a spirit and direction in the soul of a whole people trying to figure its way out of the darkness into the light. But the way of God is this: God doesn't give the light to everybody at once. God just finds one that's worthy to receive that light, and that one will express it for the benefit of the many. So I don't really see David Walker, Booker T. Washington, etc., as separate from us. I see them as a part of us, meaning our community leadership.
Right.
And to be more philosophical, I see them as Imam Muhammad in the process of evolution, just like Adam,
Right.
Jesus Christ, Yusuf, etc. In the ascension. They are really, in the highest sense of the understanding, they are Prophet Muhammad in the process of evolution.
Right.
But the time wasn't there yet. So I see them, and more than Imam Muhammad, as a flesh. I'm not talking about a flesh. I'm talking about as a mind and as a spirit. That mind and spirit is the highest expression of all of those best leaders. So I think that when we look at him as a product of our history, and we look at him because we're religious people, we don't look at history through secular eyes. We see history and God's presence in history as you know, is connected. So when we look at it from that angle and from that direction, I think we have what we need to feed our souls. And if we have that type of belief and we embrace it, I'm speaking from as a living witness. God himself now comes into our life individually because we have accepted God's work, our history, in everything, good and bad, leading up through Imam Muhammad. That was Allah's work. God was doing all of it. So if we embrace it and see it in the way that I'm speaking right now, and this is not my words, I'm speaking as you mentioned in the beginning, as a student of Imam Muhammad, Allah himself becomes our teacher, becomes our Lord. That's a real thing. So this is why students like myself, like Sharif, we can, you know, you'd be hard pressed to try to move us in some type of direction. This is our reality. This is not something that we theorize. We taste this. We breathe this. So that's my few cents on the issue.
You can comment if you want, Sharif, or you can.
I would just give a very brief comment to that. You know, total agreement. That question reminds me of the story of Yusuf, and without going into the details of the story of Yusuf, because I'm sure it's going to come up again during this talk. his brothers, came to him, and when Yusuf made himself known, his brother said, are you really Yusuf? And he confirmed that, yes, I'm Yusuf. So I'm saying that to say that Yusuf never denied his identity. He never denied his identity. He embraced his identity. And really, truly, it was his identity, him remaining Yusuf, that proved that God was just. It proved that God's word, that his promise was true, by him remaining to be Yusuf, that he was oppressed, he was denied, he was separated, he was shunned. And then if he went off to this new kingdom and he became like the other guy that was in prison, pressing wine and serving them and being amongst the elite, and lost his identity, then it would not prove that God is just.
You must see his screen
Yeah,
froze.
froze.
Well, Sharif, we're gonna give it a few seconds, see if we can get him back. Did you hear his voice?
No.
No, I don't hear it either. We're gonna move to another question until he comes back. I see you.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah. We can hear you.
I don't know what happened. But I've been having troubles with this computer. Internet went out a little earlier, but he never denied his identity, and by him not denying that identity is really what made his family, made the world bear witness to God's justice, and
right.
And that's for us too. For us too, we cannot separate ourselves from who we are. We cannot separate ourselves from our history. We cannot separate ourselves from what has been done to us. We have to embrace that. And then we have to understand what the plan of God is and then live out that truth. We have to, because God will always prove true. And it's our job to be a part of that truth. It's our job to be a part of that. We want to be a part of that. But it will happen. So yeah, that's my.
We definitely appreciate both those comments. I'm going to direct this to you, Brother Sharif. What will the return of our Black Wall Street look like under the reality of New Africa community life? For those of just to the listening audience, we have had as a people, we have from slavery, we built our own towns throughout various parts of America. They still would be in existence today if it weren't for racist Caucasians who were envious of the progress of African Americans up from slavery. Because as slaves, we had labor, we had the skills, so we built our own towns, banks, so on and so forth. But there are several African American towns that were destroyed with the same historical excuse. Someone so-called looked at a white woman, or a white woman was so-called raped. So many of those towns were destroyed. And one of the most renowned towns was called Black Wall Street. So that's just some history lessons regarding Black Wall Street. But again, what will the return of our Black Wall Street look like under the reality of New Africa community life, Brother Sharif?
Yeah, I think that that's a really good question. It's really what we're working for. Is really what we're working for. And I think that as African Americans as a whole, many of us, we know of Black Wall Street, we studied Black Wall Street, and there were many other streets, you know, and I have to tell our people many times, like, you know, we have to remember that it was a street, you know, and that should tell us how easy it should be for us to establish that, because it was a street. We're not talking about a city, we're talking about a street. And there are things that we can do now on our own street. You know, it may not be the street that you live on, but it reminded me of, you know, gangs in DC. Everybody didn't live on that one street, but they would claim that street because that particular street was where people would meet at. You know, coming from these different areas, you know, but that's the closest street to them. You know, you may not live on 37th. You know, you may live on 36, but but you're gonna claim 37 because that's the street that most people are coming towards. So really, it's the same thing for us. You know, we have identified areas in our community we can cultivate, and to not just see it limited to just a particular street. For example, Detroit is wide open. You know, even as the world is going through the phase that it's going through now, prices are dropping even more. And we could, as a community, really, and it's not just Detroit, you got Baltimore, you got places in Jersey, you got places in Milwaukee. They have homes, many homes in Milwaukee that you could have a group of people. It doesn't take a lot, 5-10 people, who commit themselves to going to that area, purchasing, you know, a few homes. They could survey the area, look at the schools, look at the parks, look at different things around that area, and they could really start Wall Street again. If you had 5 families that went to one of these areas, and let's say these homes were $1, or they collectively got together and went to a land bank and said, okay, we want to purchase X amount of homes, then that's newsworthy for our community. That would make headlines for our community. My company, We Buy Black, would make that a media shout out. It's like, that's deserving to shout out, that you have 5 families that went to a neighborhood, purchased these homes, purchased these shops, and they have a vision of turning those things into businesses that help support their life, and support the life around them. So I know the question. I know the question. I'm aware of the question, but I'm going to leave it. I want to leave it there. And
I understand. I appreciate it. All the information is good. I just would like to add to what you're saying. I would just say that the Wall Street now, or Black Wall Street now, would be something that will stand the test of time, because whereas Imam Muhammad mentioned before, we had a lot of progress even in the Nation of Islam under the Elijah Muhammad, but the circumstances wouldn't allow us to keep it. It wasn't right for us. We had too much against us. But now that opposition, that type of pressure is not on us. So, and we could be, number one, we have too many people outside of our community, outside of the African American community, who wouldn't let such things happen to us as a people again. I'm going to go to this important question regarding al-Islam in America. Without studying the history of Professor W.D. Farad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and Imam W.D. Muhammad, al-Islam in America cannot be fully understood or appreciated. Do you agree, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely would agree. I do agree. Again, we are not, we're interesting as Muslims, people of faith, period. Allah says in the Quran, أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And then he says, أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Most of them do not know. And most of them don't believe. And this is not, it's not a condemnation, just a blanket condemnation of human beings. but it is really just highlighting the state of man's mind. While asr, innal insana lafi khusr. By the time down through the ages, the human person is in loss, except for those who have faith, the righteous deeds, watawasa bil haq, and mutually support the cause of truth. How many people are really devoted to truth in reality? Like, I want to know what's real. Very few. So most of them don't know. They're faith, they're people of faith, they're people of righteous deeds, they may even be people of patience. But how many are really devoted to truth in reality, in how they perceive and in how they live? And I'm prefacing my comments with all of that to just say that how many Muslims, African American Muslims, let alone immigrant Muslims or the children of persons who are immigrants, how many of them really see our history in America and our current circumstance as the hand of God? Now, in our theology, when we start talking about religious knowledge, oh yeah, God is in control of everything, da 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 da. But when we live our life day to day, we don't think about it like that. We don't connect the two. So why is that important? Because if Islam began in America a certain way,
Right.
Allah allowed it. And if Allah allowed it, and we know that the whole universe is in essence the act of God, and nothing happens except by his will, then as a Muslim, I'm forced to study that phenomenon and how it happened and ask, well, why did Allah allow this to happen? Or why did Allah himself do it this way? Why did Allah do it this way? So I think it's very important. Now, there are several sides to this. I think that African Americans in our association, and maybe in other groups too, they want Muslims that come from other parts of the world to kind of give us some type of acknowledgement. I don't really want that. I don't look for that. I don't need that. And I don't think we should look for that or want that either. That doesn't mean anything, because this is also a real world. I mean, people don't want to hear what you did 100 years ago. People want to know what you're doing now. So while it may be of interest to the thinker or to the student of higher ideas, the average person, they're not really, what can they say? And I think the immigrant Muslims have said it enough. We thank the blacks, we thank the African Americans for helping establish Islam. So they've said it. What else are they supposed to do but say it? I've heard, brothers, they should give us some money. They should help our messages. Well, then that violates the history that you're forcing them to acknowledge, because the history that you want them to acknowledge is the history of do for self, like we were just talking about. Right. So I think it's more important for us to know ourselves and to know our history for ourselves and to pass it on to our children. So yes, it's very important, but I think that we should be very careful about the amount of weight we put on its importance in terms of which group sees it as important. And another thing, people tend to not respect you when you don't respect yourself. People don't come to you just to lift you up. They don't see us valuing our history, because they don't see us valuing our present. Therefore, the excellence and beauty of our history, until we wake up, it will get washed away. And many of us in our community, we don't know the history. How many of our sisters, and I'm not picking on the sisters, the brothers too, but how many of our sisters who teach religion in our association really know about Sister Clara? Imam Darnell's wife was taught how to bake. She baked. She knows this. She's still alive. She was taught how to bake by Sister Clara, who was taught by Mr. Farrar. That's our history. How many of our sisters who go around speaking in our community take time out to reach out to that sister, to just take from her as a real pioneer, real elder? So we got work to do.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, you're right. It leads me, you mentioned something about the do for self. It leads me to this next question. Why did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or Imam W. Muhammad strongly advocate using our own finances to build our community? instead of depending heavily on government funding. Because I see that there's Muslims throughout the country, you know, are building this, building that, but it's really not impressive if most of it's coming from the government. It's not the history of our legacy. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really, you know, well, I'm gonna speak to the history, but it reminds me of what's happening now. You have programs that, you know, you could apply for and become qualified for with the government. And, you know, those programs are cut short after a particular time. And, you know, for some people during that particular time, they would do really well. They will make a lot of money. They will be feeding their family. You know, they will be helping their community. But then when that program runs dry and that program is shut off, then they don't have any infrastructure that's built to ensure that their community continues to thrive. And then it becomes dried up. And, you know, that's a very terrible situation to have to be in, you know, to be dependent on another entity for your survival. And when you, as a Nation of Islam, in the Nation of Islam, when you really bootstrap and you work with those in your community to pull, you know, you have, you know, 100,000 people that can give $100. You know, you talking $10 million. And what could you do with that? What can you do with $10 million? A person, the best mind in our community, what can they do with $10 million? What's the vision? What's the plan that we could do with $10 million? And then we establish the stores, we establish the things that we would go and support anyway. And this is very important. You know, sometimes we build infrastructures that we believe is the best infrastructure to have, but yet that entity that we built is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So what could happen is that you could build an infrastructure, and if it's not sustainable, then just in a matter of years, you no longer have it anymore. And this is why I go back to me being against reparations as of now, because we don't have in our community as a whole, there hasn't been identified good leadership on a unified front. It hasn't been good leadership on a unified front. That, you know, you look at the churches, you look at the masjids, you know, we look at our communities as a whole. We don't take the money that we have and then put a plan together and say, how, for all the expenses that I have, I spend $6,000 a month, $5,000 a month, $4,000 a month. How can I ensure that $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, that majority, if not all of it, is going to go right back to our community? And then those who the money goes to ensure that they have the same thoughts and same beliefs. See, during the time of the nation, if you could get your bread from our bakery, right? If you could go and get your food, your groceries, everything that you need. Groceries is the second highest expense in a household outside of mortgage. It's the second highest expense. But if all of that is going to another entity, then just take a community. I take this local community I'm in. If you have 500 families in a local community, and out of 500 families, the average family is spending $450 a month, then you talking over $3 million a year that's going outside of our community every year. So the Nation of Islam and the thought of doing for self is to say, okay, here is a major hole. If we're spending $3 million outside of our community and we can get our community to see by the numbers that we're spending $3 million, if we could all make a sacrifice for 1 year to call the brother in Jersey, call the person here, to just get all of our meat from him, all of this from them, to galvanize our community and say, okay, we're going to build this grocery store. We're going to build this. What happens? What happens is that you now have that $3 million that was going out of your community you now have that back into your community. And not only that, you built infrastructure that the rest of the larger community will come and support. So yeah,
Right.
you keep $3 million in your community, but now you multiply that times 10. I myself, Sharif, know 10 other people that would come, that I can influence to come and support that institution, right? And you may know 10 people. So what happens is that you multiply that 3 times 10, then you have 30 million that's coming back to your community. Now you have to ask yourself, okay, in 1 year, if we just put in our mind to do for ourselves in 1 year, we have $30 million that we can now have in our own community. Now, what can we do? When we talk about our schools, when we talk about the sister Khadija Muhammad's program, when we talk about people in our community who we know that Allah has blessed with, has blessed them with ideas, business ideas, concepts, educational ideas, political ideas, then we confront that as a community. We confront those ideas. So this is the way of the Nation of Islam. This is the way that this is our history. It's not complicated. You have really, the world is acknowledging that this is the best way to raise money, is by empowering people and getting people to be a part of it. We had recently in 2016, you had the bill that was passed for equity crowdfunding, which allowed for people who typically would not be allowed or be deemed as an accredited investor, that now you can just be whoever and now put up $100, $500, and now invest in a company and have stake in that company today. So we living in a new time, and I honestly believe that these systems that we see coming about is really built for us to be able to produce the life that we need to produce for ourselves.
Can I interject? Because a lot of things you were saying really had my mind going, and I want to stay on the question, but sometimes certain questions and certain answers lead to other issues. So the first thing I would say to you, I would say this to Ahmed and the New Africa Intelligentsia. I think that this type of discourse or discussion really needs to be ongoing. It needs to be taken up as a serious responsibility. I would even publish in the Muslim Journal, or if not on a blog, or just an essay on Facebook, or all of ideas such as what Sharif just mentioned. Because here's what the real issue is for Black people. And this goes back to the question about our history. Black African Americans, I think it's because again, I talked about earlier about the negative effects of our history as a people. And I think one of the negative effects of our history is that we don't like to look at it. And we don't like to look at it to such an extent, we don't even acknowledge the excellence of our history. So what is the tradition of African American leadership? It's given in the story of Moses when he leads his people out of bondage, out of Egypt. And he leaves his brother Aaron, upon both of the prophets be peace. He leaves him in authority. And Aaron, we know, is the scholar. And from his descendants, according to the Bible, are the Levites. That's the scholarly class. They are the ones that are going to upkeep the religious life of the Jewish people. And for instance, in the Quran, Surah Al-Ali Imran, Imran was a family amongst the Levites. They were the ones, and it comes from the term Umar, or like when Allah says Ya'murun, it means life, but it means really to sustain and maintain the life. So when Allah says those who are fit to maintain the messages of Allah, Ya'murun, the sacred mosque, they are the ones that are entrusted with the responsibility to keep it in proper condition, keep it functioning, keep it healthy. And the religious leadership, that's their job. They are supposed to serve as guardians of the life of a people. And it begins in this narration with Aaron. Now, what happens though? Musa is the one who is given revelation by God. Aaron is his right arm, who is the scholar. But when the one who received revelation is absent, and he leaves the scholar in authority as a Khalifa, behind him, meaning he succeeds him, and he is supposed to uphold and keep to the office of that inspired one. The brother of Moses, we know the story. He ends up allowing for a false idol to be made. Now, the Bible says he did it. The Quran absolves him from doing it, but it still charges him with not keeping the order. He allowed the Samiri to do it, but he didn't stop him because he feared the result from the people. So this is commentary. All of this is guidance for people who are trying to find their way, who are trying to arrive at their promised land, their new Africa. In the absence of the inspired leader or the inspired leaders, you have the scholars, because the learned, after all, are the inheritors of the prophets. And the tendency on the part of those who come behind the leaders that God chooses is that they violate the office of that leader in some way or the other. They let their own mind, they let their own thinking get in the way. They let their own moral weakness or lack of moral courage get in the way, so they don't uphold the office of that leader to the T. In the history, this is what made Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, a strong leader. Because the history says that after the prophet passed, whatever the prophet had established as what should be done, to the fact that even the army was about to be marched, sent out to war, to the collection of the zakat, etc. Abu Bakr, his position was, if that was what the prophet wanted done, that's what was going to get done. No matter how trying or no matter how big the giants were that was in the way of the ummah. Now, what am I saying this for? When you look at the history of our people, let's take the black church, for example. Those leaders that come behind men like Dr. King, men like Howard Thurman, they are in violation of those men. They are not keeping to their spirit. They have not kept to their spirit. They have not kept to the trajectory of those leaders in terms of their spirit and emphasis. And the same is true for our community. The same is true for the Nation of Islam. Those leaders, and I'm saying this, I love everybody. I love them. They're my brothers, the Christians and the Muslims. Those Nation of Islam brothers today that we hear, they don't spark us like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sparked us, like Malcolm sparked us. We don't see, we don't feel the spirit. And the same thing is true in our association. We don't have imams and teachers. You don't feel from them that Imam Muhammad is their leader. You don't feel that, because spirit is real. Spirit is real. You can feel another human being. And because they don't have that, the community can't move anywhere. I'm talking about all of these different types of leaders in the black community. The community is not moving where it needs to go. Why? African Americans, in light of our history, we never just had a religious leader or a political leader. Our leaders were always leaders for all of these aspects of our life, because we didn't have anything established in our life. So the church leader was about business. He was about politics. He was about social issues. He was about the whole gamut. In our unique community circumstance, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad started schools. He started businesses. You see what I'm saying? He was about dawah. There was an entire program. So you can't be an imam in this association and not inherit that same line of focus. Imam Muhammad was the same way. Imam Muhammad wasn't just teaching us salat. Imam Muhammad wasn't just teaching us religion as religion is popularly understood as spiritual expression. Imam Muhammad, again, business emphasis, educational emphasis, political emphasis, etc. And that is what accounts for, or that is what has accounted for our progress. But when leaders, future generations come behind and don't maintain that trajectory, the life of the group gets stagnant and the people wander in the wilderness. And I really believe that that's what we see happening. You know, they have these, almost since Imam Muhammad passed, even in our community, every theme for every event is, you know, appreciating our past, building on our future. It's something like that. And I understand, but we have to, you know, this is Ramadan, man. You know, and like I said before, most people don't want the truth. But the scripture said, know ye the truth, and the truth shall free you. My spirit is not to condemn anyone. My spirit is not to put down anyone, but my spirit is for the truth. Why don't we just admit that, hey man, we haven't kept up with where our best minds, our leaders were moving us. And that's why we see all of these problems. So they make the complaint, where are the youth? The youth don't have an interest. Why should they? I was telling my wife, I think I was telling this to you too, Sheree. If I have a painting company and my children grow up seeing me paint one house a week, bringing in $500 to $1,000 a week, that's not an attractive. They may or may not pick it up. But if they see daddy having a 50-man crew, 100-man crew doing commercial projects, making $600,000 a year, now I can say, here, son, I need you to take this over. And they will be readily responsive, more than likely, to take that over. So we have to look at our performance as a community and see why we are dealing with a situation where a lot of young people are not attracted. If they are into Islam, they want to go and follow another orientation. We have to do some type of soul searching. And I'm taking it back to the cause of not following the leaders in the spirit that those leaders led us in. That's a big problem. And I was reading something from Imam Muhammad. He said he prayed. I'm paraphrasing, but he actually prayed that Allah punish us if we cheat His leadership. And I agree 100%. I hope we catch. I was gonna say donkey whip, strong donkey whip until, and that's what I see happening. That's what I see happening. It is a good old down south butt whipping.
That's right.
I want to say regarding all these comments, I appreciate. I'm sure the audience is appreciating these comments, because these are topics and issues that are not talked about as often as they should be talked about. And one of the topics that need to be addressed regarding New Africa is its foundation, and that is Muslim African Americans marrying Muslim African Americans, Muslim African American men marrying Muslim African American women, and African American men marrying African American women. This is a serious issue in our communities as African American people. And what do you see, brothers, either of you, as being the cause, the reasons why out of all the ethnic groups in America and the world, African Americans seem to have that as an issue, meaning marrying within our own ethnic group, intra-racial marriage as opposed to interracial marriage? Brother Sharif?
Well, so I think of this, as, and I'm gonna come back to this question. I mean, it's a part of this question. I think of when I used to be with my father, we'd be painting home, right? And I think of this, we would have a group of Hispanics that work with us. We were part of that 600,000 you was talking about, Rashad. Close to it. I don't know a lot, but we a group of Hispanics working with us, and I would watch how you would have an African American sister walk down the street, and they go, hey, they tap each other, and then they look, and they won't say nothing. They just look, they smile, they make little comments to each other. And then if there's a Hispanic sister that's around there or walking behind them, they saw that, they will correct themselves real quick. They'll correct themselves real quick and go back to working. They have, what am I saying? They have a certain level of respect for their women. A certain level of respect that, and a certain level of respect for family. Now, I don't agree with everything. I'm just saying that they have a certain level of respect that's embedded in their culture. When I was in the Dominican, the men there, the married men, seemed that almost every last one of them had a mistress, a side chick. Almost every last one of them had a side chick. Now, what I noticed about that is that even though that was a part of their culture, the women in that culture did everything that they could to make sure that the wife never found out. They did everything that they could to make sure that the wife never found out that the husband had a mistress. What am I saying? Not that I agree with those actions, and I think that it's going to take people like us with our minds to be able to go and help our people all across the world. But what am I leading up to? That there's a level of, even though it's manipulated and the devil has got there, there's still a level of respect that they have for family and for community. And we see the way that it sort of comes out in these different ways, that they have certain level of respect for family and community. And I think that we could read any book, we could read plenty of books to see how directly from slavery we've been affected, and it has killed off that respect for each other. It has eliminated any notion of loving each other. So much to the extent that you could have a family that knows another family is starving, knows another family is hurting. And there may be a beef between those families or former beef. The wife may have had a problem with that wife, or whatever it may be. The husband may have had a problem with that person. But that family would not get together and say, listen, I don't care what our issue is. This is what we don't allow. We don't allow another family to starve. We don't allow for that to happen. You know, we find it in our community, in African-American community as a whole, that there is, and I'm saying the African-American community as a whole because we could be Muslim and still forget that we suffering from the same things that our people are suffering from.
Right.
And a kufi is not going to protect you from that. So we have to do a deep dive analysis. We have to survey our community. As leaders, we have to survey our community. We have to have a very clear understanding of what is it that we're suffering from. And we have to understand that the Quran is going to be and will be and is the liberator for our life. It will help liberate us. The life of Muhammad the Prophet, studying the life of Muhammad the Prophet will help liberate us, because there are things that the Quran say, there are things that the way that Muhammad the Prophet emulated his life, that he wouldn't go to bed knowing that there was people in his community that was hungry.
Right.
He wouldn't go to bed. The Quran, before in the Quran, Allah mentions that we should be taking care of the orphan first. This ain't even getting to the second part. The first part is to take care of the orphan. So if we're not doing our job as a people, then of course we're going to see these issues of us not wanting to marry each other. Why not? Because you have another people who may have those different things that we admire, that we want. You say, okay, we just moved into this neighborhood. Let's go give cookies to everybody door to door. You say, well, that ain't a part of our culture. We don't do that. We don't give cookies. We ain't baking pies. We ain't doing none of that. You know, we stay to ourselves. Okay. But what happens when another person comes to the door that they're not from the community we're from? I'm talking African Americans think like that as a people. But then you have another people that come to your door. Hispanic sister, welcome to the neighborhood. White sister, welcome to the neighborhood, black man. Here's your bean pie. Here's your cookie. Here's your tea, black man. So we don't see how the devil, we don't see it. We don't see it. He comes in that way. He comes in and where he gets you at, he gets you on the right path. He gets you on the right path. And the right path, what am I saying? It's in our nature, in our fitra nature, to want good for ourselves and to want good for other people. And he knows that. So what do you find? You don't find African American sisters coming down the street. Hey, sister, we see that you just moved into the neighborhood. Is there anything that we can help you out with? Do you need anything? And then they send, this is how the media works. They don't do that. They send, they put commercials out there where you have ding dong, door open up. Hey, we just see that you all moved into the neighborhood. You know, here's some cookies. Here's some cookies for you, right? So what happens to the young children when they grow up seeing this? They seeing that our people do not love each other. And they're seeing that there are other people that have an admiration for us. They love us, have an admiration for us. We see other qualities in other people. It's just like the business Rashad was talking about. If you see your family not producing anything, you're not going to want to be a part of it. So we have to have individuals in our community that have to make a sacrifice to be the best model example for not just our community of Imam Muhammad, but for the whole world. And think about our African-American community. Think about their needs, what they're suffering from. And how can we be a model example, and not just be a model example, promote it, advocate it.
Right.
Hit the media with it. So that's where we're suffering from. We know where it's rooted from, but in today's time, we see many efforts. The devil is working as hard as he could work, and Allah tells us to fight his scheme. So if we're gonna fight his scheme, then we have to go back on the right path. We should be putting out commercials, taking our dollars, putting out commercials with black man kissing on his wife. I love you. Right. You see, holding it up, swinging her in the air, swinging her in the park. Right. You know, them leaning off the train together. You know, black policemen. Tell black policemen come in. Black policemen come here, and he's swinging your children in the park.
Right.
Giving them ice cream and everybody dancing in the park. We have to promote beauty for our community. We have to promote that.
I appreciate your comments. I do want you to respond, Imam Rashad. I just wanted to, it made me think about years ago, probably the 80s. I remember I was either watching Oprah Winfrey or I was in college, and a program came on, a talk show, but it stated that at the time, out of all the interracial marriages that take place in America, African-American men take up 60% of that. Meaning we marry outside of our ethnic group more than 60%. So it was an imbalance. And so, and to your point, there seems to be nowadays propaganda promoting African Americans to not be with each other.
Oh yeah.
Constantly in commercials, constantly in movies. If we're not with each other, then we're homosexual, but something, whatever it is, we're not. The African American male and African American female are consciously being pulled apart in this society. But Imam Rashad, please comment on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point, Sharif, you were making is very poignant in that because you were highlighting really the idea of psychology. You know, people are what they see. Human beings are imitative and impressionable by nature. And we need to see positive images of family life, community life on the part of Black people. So again, back to the new Africa Intelligentsia, I mean, I know you brothers are artists. That's something that we have to have happen. We need images produced. We need language produced in a form of cultural expression. Nobody wants to hear me preach nothing. You know, you come, you got to be a Muslim who really wants to learn. And even among that, people like myself, we lose. The cultural people have a stronger reach than we do. So if it's comic books, if it's music, we have to promote. I think what you're saying. All of this goes back to ancient Egypt. Is because that society mastered human psychology, and they knew the power of images, and how images not only affect an individual person, but when an image is implanted in the subconscious, and modern science now attests to this. I forget the name of the science now in genetic studies, missing me, but they know that epigenetics. They know that now this will even influence the genetic makeup, and it will be passed on to another generation. To whereas this new generation will have a genetic predisposition to be susceptible to this type of oppressive idea. For us, it started in slavery. Imam Muhammad, he gave a lot of discussion over the years about it. One of the most recent things he discussed was just the simple fact of here, the slave is in the field with his woman. Her hair is not done, his is not done. She's sweaty, he's sweaty, so on and so forth. And here's Miss Ann coming out of the house, smelling like roses, hair done, pretty dress. Now, you all think about that. Think about your wives, and think about being in a situation where your wife looks just as rough as you, and she smells just as bad as you, if not worse. And here's another woman who's in your same environment now, and she's smelling like fresh. You know, them women got them old nice smelling things. You know, that stuff that stuff they put on, man. The shampoo, the lotions, it just travels through the air. Now that'll have an effect on one of us that day. We're like, damn, baby, why don't you go take a shower? But imagine now, our wives are not able to take a shower. Imagine the effect in 1 week. Imagine the effect in a year. Imagine the effect in 10 years. Imagine that effect generation after generation. Your woman is not attractive to you, or at least not as attractive as that woman who's been smelling good and looking good for generations. And back in the day, even when they would even dealing with marketing, they would put images of, whatever. They were trying to sell a product. They would put images of beautiful white women all throughout the Black neighborhood, in our magazines and our billboards. So images, again, the psychology of ancient Egypt. So I think that, it's our desire for other races is abnormal, the men, but it's also understandable if you see what happened. How do you deal with it? Again, I go back to the example Sharif gave. We have to really compete with images ourselves. That's for the word for people. I think for us as Muslims, I mean, when I say people, I mean those who are not among us. For us, I believe, I'm telling you this as a real thing. The more we become Muslim in the true sense of the word, the more we embrace the Quran, Muhammad's tradition, it cleanses us. It really does heal us. I'm not personally, when I was in high school, I used to proclaim like I like light skin, long hair. I was a slave, the slave mind, I used to have that when I was like 14, 15. The more I studied and learned, I love, what I mean? I'm not attracted, and I'm saying this with all due respect. I don't find an attraction to other races. I just don't. I think they're pretty, but they don't draw me in like Black women draw me in.
It's true.
I found myself having just a desire for my own. The more I became a Muslim, the more I've become a real human. So I think that for us, we have to cleanse ourselves with our religion, but in a sober perspective. Now, this brings up another issue, and I don't want to prolong it, but we have to really take up the discussion of marriage and family in a serious way, because that is a problem. Our men, most of the popular speakers that are African Americans, the popular Muslim speakers, they maybe did a couple years overseas or something. Most of them, a great majority of them, have non-African American wives. Now, I find that odd. How can you really lead a people or help a people and you're not connected to the people in the most intimate way? And they have all of these justifications for it, you can't help who you love and all of this stuff. Allah led me to her, but I don't believe that. You can make a choice. You have to choose a Black woman, and Sharif, we down here in Atlanta. I don't. There's some choices. So what's the problem? I think there's a real problem. I think there's an issue.
Atlanta.
So,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean Atlanta is a really good case study. of what's happening, what's going to happen in the world. Atlanta there's a lot of cultural influencers here in Atlanta. A lot of, our children, a lot of these high schoolers, a lot of the women that they be doing the dances and following, those women are all here in Atlanta. Those people are all here in Atlanta. The pop stars, a lot of them are all here, right here in Atlanta. And the Atlanta culture is going to dictate a lot of what's getting ready to come into the world. What you will find, and Rashad, we used to be in the malls. It was rare to find just a Black family walking together. That was like rare. When you saw it, you wanted to jump out there and say, "Let me take a picture."
Yeah.
I remember me and my son was walking down the street, and somebody just said, "Please, just stop. Let me take a picture of you two." It's very abnormal to find men with their children, men with their wife and their family. Very abnormal here. And in fact, what became the norm here in Atlanta, you'll see a women with other women and then the children together as a family.
Yeah.
You'll find, I saw in the mall, you have groups of men who turn their bodies to women bodies. And I remember it was a group of young boys that was together, and they stopped. Look. They got excited because they saw the back of the people, the back of them. And they're like, hey, they all excited, and one of them, one of them said something, they turned around, and when all of them turned around, it was a group of homosexual men. And these are young boys. I'm talking about these boys were like maybe 11 to 14 years old. And they got excited when they saw them guys. And then when they saw them, when they turned around, and I'm telling you this, if that was to happen when I was growing up, the young boys would have probably been ready to fight that other group. I'm just saying that's what the scenario would have been. These boys, when they saw that, it was weird. It was different. Because when they turned around, they didn't show any emotion. They just saw, and they kind of just it was almost as if they weren't even embarrassed. They just sort of just went along. Like they didn't say anything. They just turned around, like, oh, wow, it was that case. Let's just keep walking. So we have to understand that some of those guys that was in that group may be the uncle of that boy, maybe the older brother of that boy. So I'm just throwing that out there to say, yeah, Atlanta is really what we're seeing happen in Atlanta is what we're getting ready to see happen all across the U.S. Mm-hmm. And we here in Atlanta have to really take up the responsibility to everywhere, everybody has to take up the responsibility. But I'm saying that, consciously understanding that this is really striking us most here, we have to take up the responsibility. Allah tells us in the Quran that He blesses the one that respond to Him. Mm-hmm. But responsibility means your ability to respond. Yeah. Respond to what? Right. Respond to the call of Allah. Right. So those who take up the greater responsibility, Allah will bless us. He will bless. That's His promise. Then if we run from the responsibility, Allah will torture us, will curse us. Mm. And we know what's right, we know what's wrong. So we do have an obligation.
We definitely have a responsibility as students of Imam Muhammad, who has been the advocate when I look back from my life, more so than any African American leader that I'm aware of, in promoting African Americans marrying each other, to hold to that, because you don't have New Africa without African American families marrying each other. That's the foundation. We have to go to the foundation. You can't skip over that and I'm going to do whatever and have, no, it's not going to work. We have to have that. I'm jumping around because I know I'm looking at the time. So I'm trying to get to some of the other questions that we have, but all of them are related when we take the time to listen to the questions and the responses. This question is about the commentary of Imam Muhammad, the tafsir. And I'll wait for Brother Shah to come back.
Yeah, I'm here. I just had to grab my charger.
Okay. Yeah, mine's blacking out too. So. The question is, why do so many of our leaders, talking about within Imam Muhammad's association or speakers, shy away from presenting and or accepting Imam Muhammad's tafsir of scripture, of Quran and just in general? What are your thoughts? Because it's I sense that growing up, and Imam Muhammad has commented on that, that his issue with his leadership was the imams under him. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that, Imam Rashad?
Yeah. Well, I studied it. I thought about it and studied it for a long time. Forgive my phone, it's making this noise. It's been on so long. They're telling me it's too hot to charge. So we'll see. So it's mainly ignorance. And I think it's ignorance that is born out of lack of faith. And in some instances, lack of sincerity. But I think most of it is ignorance born out of lack of faith. You know, we in a lot of these questions and how we've addressed, as we have addressed them, we have connected whatever the issue is to slavery. And the same thing is true with us as a religious community. There is something that exists in our psyche that tells us, many of us, that we don't have it all. We need something else. There has to be something outside of us that verifies what we are. Again, one of the negative effects of our history. Imam Muhammad addressed it. He talked about how our circumstance as a people made us as clay. And the only backside to us being made clay is that we are readily accept to be shaped by any hand as long as it doesn't look like ours. And that's just us. We're just literally ignorant. There have been, people have been, they've made comments to me that suggest that because we claim and we're students of Imam Muhammad, somehow we're closed-minded. But the opposite is true.
Right.
From the moment I began to study Imam Muhammad, like Malcolm, when he became a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I mean, we literally study the universe, whatever we can get our hands on. Every science, every field, every religion, it literally expands our minds to engage knowledge as a whole. We are turned on. But anyway, why do I say ignorance? I studied. One of the things you mentioned in my bio was I went to Medina Institute. I had Medina Institute was a Usuluddin, the Foundations of Religion. It was a program put together by this very popular teacher, scholar. He's in America, but he's from Syria, Aleppo, Syria. Comes from a scholarly family. And he has this worldwide institution. In South Africa, I think that's where the first school was established. You know, you can actually get a degree, accredited degree. But anyway, I had been a student of Imam Muhammad since I began to study the religion. But I was always curious. You know, I'm hearing these other teachers of Islam, and I read a lot of books on my own, that whatever I can get my hands on that were published from Islamic knowledge. And I just really had a thirst to know, okay, what are the quote unquote other Muslims studying, for want of a better way of putting it. And I tell you, brother, Allah's my witness, when I went there, it was amazing to me. Now, on the one hand, I liked it because I'm a student, I like to study, and I like knowledge, and I like Islamic knowledge. So it was very beneficial from that angle. But from the angle of understanding, because when you're with a sheikh or a scholar of sort, especially when they get comfortable, they begin to share with you more than what's just in the book. They start to share with you their respective insights and what their teachers taught them. And I'm telling you, brother, that Allah's my witness. I'm saying to myself, you know, the technical information I didn't know, like this is what this particular hadith is categorized as, and here's why. I had read it, but it's better to get it in a class. You know, you get a different type of approach. But when it comes to insight, like what that hadith means, brother, Allah, I'm telling you, man, Allah has just blessed us so thoroughly. It's almost unbelievable.
Right.
You can only believe it because you experience it. Imam Muhammad was taught by God, and I appreciate my experience in that institution. I didn't want to go back because I felt that, you know, I got what I wanted to get, and that type of knowledge, that's not my interest. That's not my interest. So when I hear other imams among us now putting emphasis on certain things, I just know because here, man, I'm talking about, I'm reading hundreds of books, Muslim theologians, Muslim philosophers, they get Sufi, like the Sufi philosophers, not just like Sufism, but and I'm reading their ideas, and I'm knowing what Imam Muhammad said, and I'm knowing from study that there's not even conflict. There's not even conflict. When you read what the best minds have had to say about Islam, they all are in the heavens. But you know, there's 7 levels to heaven too, though. So I'm respecting what they're saying, and then what they're saying is just support for the extent to how Imam Muhammad took it. And then you have to understand, as a student, you have to understand when Allah comes into your life and shows you how to read his book, nobody can tell you anything.
Right.
Like that old Kanye West song. You can't tell me. You can't tell me anything. It's impossible. Allah just showed me this. And this is, you know, craziness. So I know for a fact that those people are ignorant. They either don't know what Imam Muhammad was really saying. They either don't know what the scholars scholars is a broad term. You have scholars of different sciences. They either don't know what they were saying, or they don't know either or. They're just ignorant. So it's acceptable because we're a new community. And this type of lack of understanding, you kind of see it in the history of all, like the beginning of the Muslim community, the beginning of the Christians. You kind of have this kind of fumbling stage in the beginning. After you have this great leader, you have this kind of early stage where people are just kind of, in their imagination more than they are in real knowledge. And I think that's where our community is. Most of our imams, it's unique. One of the things that you can get readily from any popular teacher of Islam that was taught in the Islamic world, they all sound like they come from a crystallized tradition. They sound like they come, it's like a car being made from the same factory. Whereas our imams, they sound like they all have taken from the imam, but they're all over the place. There's no conformity to anything. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's an immaturity. Whereas the other students of knowledge, they sound more mature because of that, because they sound like they come from a crystallized system of knowledge. Our imams don't have that. They don't sound like they come from a crystallized system of knowledge. It sounds like they're just in the imagination phase, which is the first level of growth for the mind, it's imagination. So all of this is natural. All of it's natural. This is the nature of communities. This is how religious communities grow. Some of us who are more advanced than others, we have to just take it upon ourselves to assist the community in its growth, in knowledge. I know for a fact, when Imam Muhammad told us that there was nobody higher than him in Islamic knowledge other than the Prophet, I really believe that. And I'm not a crazy person. I'm very rational. You have to understand, man, like I told you, I don't be having nobody to talk to. I be burning my wife here off. I don't have me now as a student of him, man. I don't acknowledge anybody. Wallahi, and I'm saying that with no arrogance. People who know me, I don't go after attention. I'm talking about the big shots that are popular, and I respect them and I love them. But when it comes to the Quran and its language and what this connects to in its understanding, I don't look up to anybody. I'm talking about name any big time guy you can come up with. I don't want to name them out of respect for them.
Right.
Imam Muhammad told us that in class. He said he hadn't met one person in the world that he felt knew more Quran than he did. Allah lifted him up highest in that knowledge. And I believe those of us who are his sincere students, we taste some of that. I don't feel that anyone is superior to us. I really don't. I feel that they have beautiful minds, but I'm with my wife. I'm listening to the Grand Mufti of this country. I'm listening to this Sheikh. I mean, these guys big guys, and I love them and I respect them. And I'm showing my wife, look at this in my little jot down notes over here, what they just said is the tafsir of this. Look at this. I just literally, and I'm jotting my little notes down as a student of the Imam. I don't look up to any of them. And I think that that's our inheritance. I'm getting off of your question, but this is important.
No, it's very important.
We have all of that technical knowledge in terms of the how-to, Arabic grammar, all that. Allah has really blessed us, as Sharif mentioned. We are like Joseph. We are the people of Ta'wil. Put something before me, I guarantee you I can read right through it. And I can read it better than the one that put it before me. That's been my experience. They come with these hadith. We were talking recently. The brother said, you read Surah Ali Imran and you'll be protected from snakes. I can write a dissertation on that hadith. Even though the hadith is weak, if not for it, I know we know more than what that means. But I can't recite like that, brother. I know I can't. That's not my training. So as Joseph was given the ta'wil, I believe that's the unique gift that Allah has given us, the ta'wil. And if we accept to be students of the Imam, Allah blesses us. We get openings.
Imam Rashad, can you explain for the audience the definition of ta'wil?
Ta'wil is just the ability to interpret. You can see into the essence of the thing. So Joseph, again, they related to him the dream of the king, and he just knew what it meant. Whereas the king's top minds, his top scientists, with their knowledge that upheld that great civilization, they couldn't penetrate into it. And I think, and it really has to happen like that. That's the only way we could ever hope to be competitive. We're so far behind. How can we ever catch up?
Right.
Having to go through, Allah has to do something extremely special. And that's what he's done. And I'm telling all of you all who are listening, I'm sharing it with you, brothers. Believe me, immerse yourself in the Quran. That's what I did. Imam Muhammad told us when we study a surah, look up every word. I looked up every word in the Quran. I studied the Prophet's life. I still do. And I read the Quran, not in English. I looked up the word, I studied the grammar, and I immersed myself, and I still do, in Imam's commentary. And I studied the Bible, and I still do. Believe me, Allah will open, if you're sincere, if you have the right, Allah will open you up. And, I just don't start trouble, but these guys, they need to join our class.
That's right.
And that leads me.
I don't want that, but I'm just telling you the reality. I don't lift them up. I just really don't. And I love them. I'll embrace them. We can sit down, break fast, eat dates, and just chop it up as brothers. But when it comes to opening up the book and discussing the book, I don't. No, sir. Allah is personally with us. I believe that.
That leads me to this second question, which is right in line with that. And how should we start teaching our people to understand the unique mission we have as a community of Imam W. Muhammad? How should we be addressing our congregation?
Well, I start off. I'm just going to start here, right? We talk about this a lot. Me and Rashad talk about this a lot. I want to say this. I really have a strong interest in helping to fund those institutions that where it doesn't exist today. What we're talking about does not exist today. What Rashad is expressing to us, what he's expressing to us, can you imagine the having an institution? Rashad, let me ask you a quick question. How long were you a student of Imam Muhammad?
In the class, it was about 4 or 5 years.
And then, I mean, from when you started studying Imam Muhammad to now, how long have you been?
Oh man. So for about, how old am I now? Maybe about 17 years.
Okay. Here's what I want to draw our attention to.
Kind of froze your screen, Rashad.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can charge my phone because we got 3% left. Maybe if I turned it off, it won't say it's overheating.
I understand. But go ahead, Alice.
Yeah, so if what I believe will happen and must happen, and I ask Allah to bless me with the resources to help ensure that this happens, is that for those that we have in our community that are teachers and that like Rashad, like Sis Khadija, who really give themselves their whole life to this. You had people during the time of the Prophet that gave themselves to just study. That's just what they just gave themselves to, is just study. And I would like to see these institutions establish ways that when we put our children through it, by the time they get to 18 years old, they will be writing those books. Can you imagine having 10, 20, 100, 400 graduates where they all are capable for being leaders in the world in all aspects of our life? Because they have became not just scholars in the Quran, but they recognize the blessing that God has given us directly.
Right.
And have accepted that blessing fully. And have given their life to extracting all of what they can get from that blessing that God has given us directly. Can we imagine what society would look like, what New Africa would look like, what the world would look like, not just what the whole world would look like?
Right.
If we had leaders like that, that we could duplicate and multiply. So that really should be our greatest interest as a community. Yeah. It should be our greatest interest, and it don't have to be a big, huge, elaborate school, but education should be our number one. It should be our number one priority right now. Yeah. That we should have a school, and we need to stop. And no criticism. I mean, no, I'm criticizing, but not in a negative way. Not in a negative way. I'm just bringing our attention to this. I came through the whole Muhammad schools system. And Allah blessed me to be who I am today. And I recognize because I came through the whole system, that's why I am who I am today. However, I know what we did not have. I know what I did not receive. And I can only imagine that if I am who I am today, and had I received the things that I value most, received at an early age. I got married when I was 15. I wanted to get married when I was 15, but because of the school and the process, it took us to the age of, we were 17 years old. But it was the tafsir of Imam Muhammad that pushed us to get married.
Right.
So what am I saying? I'm saying that when we accept that responsibility to establish that institution, and when we make the sacrifice to put our children, the businesses put their money and their resources, and everybody put their behind ensuring that leaders in our community, teachers in our community are able to pour their time and their resources into them, then we will see Timbuktu institutions, libraries talking about the biology of the human being and how it connects to the Quran, libraries on clothing, how our clothing should be up to, from the bottom all the way to the top, and how it's rooted in Quran, how our marriages should be, how that's rooted in Quran, how you should garden, how you should live your life, how you should be in entertainment and business and culture, in politics and government, that we will have individuals coming through our institutions that are leading those efforts globally.
Right.
Now, this is Yusuf. that by us picking up that charge and creating this institution and building this this environment for us to be able to receive this insight, and protect and put in our children in an environment where we could protect them morally. This is what caused Yusuf to be who he was. He had divine insight and he was morally upright.
Right.
That's what he represented. Divine insight, morally upright. Allah has blessed us as a community to have that. And we have to protect that. And we have to raise that up as our priority. And the same outcome for Yusuf will be our same outcome as well.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned Sister you mentioned Sister Khadijah's class. My wife is in that program. And one of the beautiful things is for every semester they're learning a portion of Quran. So for this first semester my wife was in, they had to learn Surah Luqman. But what's beautiful is not only did my wife learn the whole surah by heart, she taught all my children. So you got to understand, but I'm waking up in the morning, I'm coming home in the evening of children chanting Quran. And I'm hearing them at the dinner table reciting it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I told my wife, I said, this is, I remember Imam Qasim said that about one of his wives. He said that he told his Imam Muhammad that, he was teaching his wife Quran, and Imam was like, he was basically saying that's an excellent thing because they'll be the ones to teach the children. And I told my wife, now when they get old enough to understand, I want to be responsible of helping them helping them understand what this means. Now, why is this significant? Because my wife's weed is not so they're ahead of me. I know some, so I just show off of what I know, and that's an at-home thing. But here we have a sister who's a student of Imam Muhammad, wife of Imam Muhammad, student of Imam Muhammad, starting a school and starting a tradition of teaching or having the students learn Quran. And now you have another tradition born out of that, where my wife is teaching her children, her 5 children, and they're learning to recite Quran from a young age. See, because we didn't grow up learning Quran like that. Maybe Qul Huwallahu Ahad, but Luqman and Yasin. And now you have a person like myself and others who are going to teach these young children from the language. So what I'm saying is that we are seeing the beginning of the strength that you're referencing, Sharif. When you're talking, I'm thinking about persons like Imam Rasul. May Allah forgive him his sins and grant him paradise. This is those of us, you can see the strength of those who follow this Imam. Mm-hmm. They're advanced people. And this is our gift. This is our treasure. This is our gift. This is our inheritance from Allah. So this is where we have to be spiritually. This is where we have to be in terms of faith. We have to accept and stand upon what Allah has done for us. And we have to see to it that our children get it even stronger than how we had it. And if we do that, those children are going to be superhuman and qualified to really be leaders of this world in a real way. That's not cliche. That's not just fluff. That's a real thing. And I believe it's coming. I believe it's coming. That's what I work for. Right. So I'm sorry, I was doing all that talking. So one of the things that I'm doing, that I'm working on is I'm just in the process. Yes, sir.
I mean, because I wanted to bring to our attention that we have to start winding down, and I wanted to ask y'all in conclusion, what are you individually doing? Because we are on topic regarding the whole topic is materializing New Africa. So what is it that you're doing, Imam Rashad, in your own way, in your own avenue, your own vein, to materialize and realize New Africa? And the same question for you, Brother Sharif. So you can continue, Imam Rashad.
Yeah, so Sharif and I, we kind of share ideas of where we at. So some of this I know he's familiar with. What I've been doing now for the past couple months, I have one book written we're in the process of typing it up now. My wife said she was gonna have it finished by tomorrow, but I'm looking at it. It don't look like it's gonna happen, you know. That's just reality. I'm looking at it right now, but my sentiment has always been, since I started studying under the Imam, our community, you know, like here in Atlanta, if someone takes Shahada and they want to get some books, we send them to Brother Khalid Khan. And Brother Khalid Khan has a table full of books. But most of those books, now it's changing a little bit, but for a large part of our history as a community, the books that we have to give to people who want to learn about Islam aren't from our community. So they don't have our language and emphasis. They don't have our spirit.
Something is happening with your sound, Sean.
Can you hear me now?
I hear it. How's it sound to you?
It sounds like you're talking from like through a phone, right?
How do I sound now?
I can hear you. It was just a little bit low.
Yeah,
okay.
We can still make out what you're saying, though.
Yeah, we can make out the same thing.
So you know, books on the pillars of Islam, books on the articles of faith, books on Prophet Muhammad, books on spirituality and purification, books on topics such as, you know, the Khalifa, the ascension of our Prophet. Basically books that really would go under the heading of theology, religious studies. We don't have we have literally hundreds of lectures from the Imam addressing these issues. Now we need the research and the sort of systematization of these topics. Ramadan itself, the Night of Power is a book on its own. Just the degrees of meaning associated with the Night of Power. For spiritual science, for philosophy, metaphysics, cosmology, literally. So my interest now has been to, and it always has been, but my attention now has been put on writing those books. We're working on about 5 right now. I just recently said, well, look, I'm just going to do one a week and just streamline it. So we have one written. I got to finish the second one. And my goal is to produce texts that will be quality text. Now, none of this third world publication stuff that we're doing, man. You know, I love our people, but come on, man.
Yeah, I think this generation learned to bypass that.
We got to compete, man. So right. Because what I want to be able to do, if a person wants to learn about Islam, we can give them something from us. And I'm not talking, when I talk about the pillars, I'm talking about like the meaning. And I want to also have something for the next phase, which is to have an institute. We want to have it, like when I went to Medina Institute, that was one of the reasons why I went. I wanted to see how they ran their schools. And I really liked what I learned. And I believe that we can do, from Imam Muhammad's tafsir, we can write books on the articles of faith, the pillars, etc., but also commentary on Quran. We can do comparative law, different areas. We can look at why these various schools have come to these conclusions. Like I had a couple that visited me today. They want to know about the Wali. There was an issue came up about the Wali. Well, different schools have had a certain approach, and I think it's very intelligent for us here in America to look at how different schools have approached it, and then look at the sources and look at our circumstances and arrive at an intelligent conclusion. So that type of work is what I want to do. One of the things what I do have in mind to do, you know, my father-in-law had produced a book. He produces books compiling Imam Muhammad's different circumstances where Imam Muhammad shared knowledge. And I had a class that we were doing in the masjid. I actually have in mind to take some of that material. A lot of the material I would kind of shave down. It's too much. And it's not organized the way I would have it organized. But I would like to do what I was doing in that class and put it in book form. Because a lot of people, you know, that's the job of those of us who study. We can help facilitate. We have to make it known in the beginning what I'm saying in regards to what Imam Muhammad is saying. Does it represent the whole of it? This is what I've drawn out of it. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to say this is what it means and close the door. But we do want to make some work available. And I'm going to close with this. I'm telling you what's real, man. This is like really real. I can see the future a little bit. The first set of books And you'll be surprised. I've had people who studied Darul Uloom. They've studied Africa. They write me secretly on Facebook. Oh, Imam, thank you. They've studied all of the 6 books. They have ijaz, and they admit they had problems with these issues. And they listen. I guess they tuned into Atlanta Masjid, and they respect our commentary. It's opened up the world for them. But anyway, the first group of books that I have in mind, it's about 30 to 50. It's very easy. These are books I can write. It's like writing a cookbook. It's not hard at all. That's going to really establish us as a legitimate group of independent thinkers for Islam. We have to show ourselves we know Islam. We're Muslim. The second class of books that I have are really going to put us in a class of our own. Not only are we going to be recognized as thinkers in Islam amongst other Muslims, the second phase of books, which are more scholarly, they're really going to show us to be very strong, if not the strongest, in Islamic knowledge. I'm telling you what's real. And I ain't talking about translating and comment on the Quran. I'm talking about just topics of study. And then the last phase of books that I have in mind to do, they're really going to put us on top. I'm talking about decades, or maybe a couple, 2-3 decades, but I have it charted out. I've been working with for like those 20 years that 17 years you asked me about, Sheree. The last phase of books, because we've been blessed we can read the Bible, we can read the universe, we can read anything. We can read American government. And when we begin to put those books together, they will really establish us as the highest minds in religion.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
That's the goal.
Alhamdulillah. Brother Sharif.
Yes, sir. I read a lot of what I'm doing right now in the bio. You know, that's my body of work. That's what I'm doing. You know, we know of so just on topic with New Africa. There is the parent company of We Buy Black is called New Africa Ventures. And New Africa Ventures has a few subsidiaries. One is We Buy Black. But the idea of New Africa Ventures is to create ventures that help us establish New Africa. So a lot of my work, you'll see that it's targeting our community. And I may use terms like, you know, Black, African-American, et cetera, but New African, you know, but a large part of my work, if not all of it, I believe all of my work has targeted our community specifically for us to help actualize New Africa. So New Africa Ventures has, you know, produced We Buy Black, a community funded business that I made a promise to our community that if we could get this thing off the ground with a few dollars that we had, then we will circulate millions of dollars in our community, and we have done that. Data, we have data of every transaction, but we circulated millions of dollars in our community. And we help businesses individually that even in our own community, that we could point to, and they'll tell you that they've done hundreds of thousands of dollars from our work. And we help other people be able to do millions of dollars. And they would come and tell you that they have earned over $1 million when working with us and from our efforts. So our goal has been really focused in on helping to fill this void of our blood or our money constantly being released to everyone else, and us being stripped from that. So we've been plugging those holes, and we've been targeting specific things. So We Buy Black has been a very strong entity for our community, and it has helped us birth, you know, the toothbrush company, the battery company. We have a brother that produced a light bulb, trash bags, razors, you know, all type of products, bed sheets, things that came. These are things that was birthed from this movement, and us also producing and working to produce a grocery store so that all of these products that we produce can be housed in that grocery store so that we could purchase these products.
Is that the soul food?
That's Soul Food Market.
Okay,
that's Soul Food Market. So right now we're working on it's really a hybrid model. where we have the app being designed right now to be developed. And essentially, you'll be able to go, well, for those in Atlanta right now, they'll be able to go into that app and they will be able to, I want, a pound of carrots, pound of broccoli, this, that, meat, and add it all up into their cart. And then check out, and then we'll have representatives on our end that'll be bagging those items up, working with Black farmers in our area, working with the local community in our area to bag these products up and then get these products delivered to their door. So like Instacart, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, which only started 8 years ago, and the founder of that company used to work for Amazon, their model, their business model, essentially is logistics, right? Is logistics, but they work with these grocery stores to get you your products to your house directly. We want to do exactly the same thing. However, the products will come from us too. So not only will we reap the benefits from logistics, but the products directly. We're also establishing a directory. We know of the marketplace, and the marketplace with all the products there, but there's another line of businesses like services. So we're building out the directory as well. So
thank you. We appreciate all the work you brothers are doing. It definitely benefited this platform.
One quick thing, real quick, I'm sorry. And on the topic of New Africa, in August, we're deeming August, we're saying that August is called New Africa August now. And our team, we have a crew here. It's a national crew, but based here in Atlanta, that is moving this effort. But it's called New Africa August, and we know that we have the convention, but because of COVID-19, we're not going to be able to have the convention, New Africa Convention. Right. But what we will have is New Africa August, which will be the whole for every day of the month. We'll be doing something really, really special for our community.
Is your company, are people able to invest in your company, or is it like in stock or anything like that?
So yeah, so with the program that I was mentioning earlier about equity crowdfunding, all of our companies are currently being situated so that our community could take part in that. As private for the initial private funding of these companies, our community will be able to take part in that. But and that's a newer system, so we want to make sure we do everything by the book. We want to be able to show that our companies are profitable in the Black, and that they're situated for success before we ask for any money from our community. And alhamdulillah, Allah is blessing us tremendously. Even during this COVID-19, we have produced more income and hired more people than we ever had. And so it's been a tremendous blessing, alhamdulillah. So we on schedule.
It's a blessing really to see that this generation, after the passing of our leader Imam Muhammad, that we have really taken to heart what Imam Muhammad have been teaching us. That is the balance of material and spiritual. We're not just talking, but we're doing, we're producing. And that's this generation, particularly your generation. I'm born in 1971, but more so your generation, the generation after Imam, we're not satisfied with just not producing. And your brothers are definitely producing things that we need in our community, and that will benefit us coming like FUBU, Forest by us. Before we conclude, I just want to mention this is a series. Every month, inshallah, we want to continue these New Africa talks with various guests, various students of Imam Muhammad who contribute to the topic of New Africa, who will be materializing, those who have something to offer, not just talkers, but producers. The community could come to this platform and see what we are producing. Our next topic for the New Africa Talks is Shura Bainahum, collective leadership or individual leader. Which direction is the most beneficial for the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad? That'll be Saturday, June 20th from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our guest presenter is Brother Abdul Latif Kadar. student of Imam W.D. Muhammad, and founder and president of Qadar Global. So that'll be live streamed. Again, that's Shura Bainahum, which in Arabic basically is collective consulting. So Shura Bainahum, collective leadership or an individual leader. Which direction is the most beneficial for the community of Imam W.D. Muhammad? So we have this flyer. It's going to be online as soon as we finish, sometime today. And that's our goal. That's what we want to do with New Africa Talks. Get to the real issues in our community. Get us moving. Put grease in the wheel to keep this community moving in the direction Imam Muhammad wanted us to move in, and we have to address critical and important issues. I believe most of us want to see our community progress, and we need platforms to discuss critical and very important topics in our community. Perhaps, inshallah, the next time we have the New Africa Talks, we're going to open up the lines for question and answer, excuse me. So with that being said, I want to again end how we started these New Africa Talks, which is to remind our viewing audience that this is a platform for the students of Imam Muhammad, serious students of Imam Muhammad, those who put nothing above the tafsir other than the Quran and life example of Muhammad the Prophet. And all are welcome to listen, and we're going to share our comments with our audience. And to remind us again, what we're doing is very much in line with what Imam Muhammad wanted us to do and what was his interest, which is what? I want to read the quote again. I want to talk to you about the need to continue building the mind of the African-American people. That is our calling in America. It's not just to be Muslim. Our calling is to build up the mind of the African-American people. That's from Cause and Effect. You can find that entire lecture on YouTube. So alhamdulillah, thank you, Imam Rashad.
Thank you, brother.
For enriching us with your presence and your comments. Until then, June 20th, Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak. We pray that Allah bless us all with a beneficial Ramadan, and we all experience the night of power, Laylatul Qadr. Assalamu alaikum, Ramadan Mubarak.
Wa alaikum assalam.